Welcome to Your Broker Room. I'm your host, Sarah Wells. Today, I'm joined by Ulrika Lobo, Director at Sparrow Loans, and my former fellow board member at the Women in Commercial Finance Forum. Welcome.
Thank you.
Look, you certainly have a diverse background. We're spanning engineering, manufacturing, construction management, media, events management, sales, marketing, and tech. So I think we are going to have a super interesting and diverse conversation today.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I think to start us off, if there was one thing that you could share with the next gen of brokers to help them take our profession to the next level, what would it be and why?
Well, given that a lot of brokers are very busy these days, it can be difficult to manage everything by yourself. Technology is a great way to boost productivity at a fraction of the cost of hiring somebody to do it. I mean, a lot of people have explored outsourcing as an option, but they've realized that that's a little bit of a trial and error process. Mm-hmm. It can take too long to find the right person to do the job. But AI, tech, platforms that are purpose-built really help bridge that gap and kind of help you bring the best to your business without you needing to know that particular expertise.
You've definitely highlighted a really interesting level when it comes to tech and AI. So if I look at the next gen coming through, their expectations of what our industry can do and have set for them is vastly different to when I came in. So can you maybe tease that out a little bit further around some of the areas that us as brokers that are already working in the industry can probably invest our time around tech, and what you mean by bringing AI into our practices?
Mm-hmm. So you're right. There's been a lot of changes when it comes to, how business has had to operate, how everything's changed. I mean, ever since COVID as well, we saw a huge move from, a lot of in-person activity to online activity. And that really brought technology firmly into the broker space. So I think, embracing online video chat was kind of the doorway to then everything else. And AI, we've kind of come to a great point where just by some chance, it was the perfect, I guess, fertile ground to adopt new technology right when everyone was already embracing it. So the way AI can be used now is just phenomenal. I mean, if I think about it, AI has been used mostly for marketing, for sales, for coming up with really eloquent pitches, documents, reports, etc. But the way the broker industry has embraced that is quite limited. I think a lot of them have used AI to do just meeting notes, but I think that really taking that to the next level of how you can use AI to implement your flow and improve the expertise, maybe even have like an AI database for your products, where you can just ask your AI, what is the best product given these parameters? That's going to be the next generation of using AI in your business.
So that's where we can sort of see things like Brokerpedia and things like that really kind of going to the point where we ask it a series of questions, put in some data points, and it delivers things to us, more than just being about delivering content or compiling notes. That sounds exciting.
Absolutely. And you know what? There's so much information out there. There's so many new products. There's so many new ways to do business that I think using AI to really keep up is also important. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind.
Definitely don't want to get to that situation where we kind of fall behind, but I think we really need to think about the future of broking. So I really love that you're being able to sort of add in that context. Now, I understand that you have a podcast yourself. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that before we jump into the confidence gap question that we want to talk about too?
Sure. So I started in debt with Ulrika Lobo as a bit of a pun on private lending. And I feel, it was a space that was largely a black box in finance. Not many people understood what the parameters of private lending are, when a deal is actually suitable for private lending, when it's not. And also, what are some of the macro factors that drive and influence the movement of private lending? Because it's very hard to predict where lenders are going to go when you're trying to plan a long-term strategy for your client. So private lenders have been known to chop and change because they can. They are much more agile and they don't have, I guess, the weight of having to be consistent in their lending parameters as much as, say, banks or non-banks. So predicting where they're going was difficult. And I wanted to really illuminate that with the podcast, provide a bit more insight and guidance around what private lenders are thinking, why we think that way, and what are some of the factors brokers can use to even predict where we're going.
I really like that you've been able to sort of talk about some of the trends around private lending, because particularly for a lot of new brokers coming in, and they tend to get those trickier deals, they're not quite knowing where to place them, and private lenders are contacting brokers regularly, and some of them can be on or off panel. So being able to talk new brokers, even more experienced brokers, through the trends and the appetite can really help people understand when it is appropriate to place someone with a private lender, because just because a deal can be done doesn't mean it should be done. So I really like that efficacy and also ethical approach. You're really elevating yourself and other voices in that private lending space to show that there is a real appetite for it, but it's also about making sure you understand what's going to happen next, because it's not a long-term solution.
Absolutely, you're so on point with that, because in private lending, I think most people just notice the interest. This is what's the interest rate. How expensive is it? But the thing is, there's so much more to the ethical practice of private lending than just cost, and understanding why the client is suitable to a particular loan product by a particular private lender is so crucial. But even understanding their reputation, getting an insight into how they're structured, what their securitization process is, which in Australia, it's great. It's a small market. Once you understand one, you can kind of extrapolate from there. But at the end of the day, most brokers and clients may not be so familiar with the strictness at which private lenders protect their capital. And understanding that, what actions private lenders are going to take in an adverse outcome, whether it's a minor one or a major one, is very important to actually planning the longevity of your client's business.
And I think also, sort of leading into this question that we wanted to talk about, which is the confidence gap, and really bridging that when it comes to women in commercial finance, women in finance, and just women in general. It's really about understanding the place for it, but also being able to accept that we don't know everything. And it's completely fine to ask questions. Take the time to understand what your client's wanting, what the lender's appetite is, and also know that you guys are a closed circle. So if it's a situation where you might not be able to assist, you'll be able to know where someone else's risk appetite is. So if you want to give us a little bit of a plug around your podcast, and then we can dovetail into some tips that you can suggest for all women out there in the industry to really build that bridge and get over their own confidence gap.
Yeah, sure. So, you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's also sometimes a driver for that imposter syndrome. Ultimately, I find that there's two reasons people feel that imposter syndrome. It's one, they actually don't know what they don't know, or two, they don't know that they know what they need to know. So it's a bit of a tongue twister, but one is genuine and one is something that actually can hold you back. The genuine aspect can be actually bridged with experience, information, a mentor, getting yourself education, whether it's informally or formally. That's great, because when you address that, then you can feel confident and actually move forward. But that's where, say, something like my podcast would be great, because then you listen to the information, you get the insight from someone on the ground, and you know that there are no gaps in your understanding of the landscape. But then there's the imposter syndrome, where you actually know what you're doing, you're extremely capable, but you can still feel like you don't know what you're doing. And that is where that gap is. It's the gap between what you feel you can do and what you can actually do. And unfortunately, women feel that gap far more deeply than men, or I would say that most people do feel imposter syndrome to some extent.
Or maybe we just articulate it or speak it out a little bit more. One of the things I say to all women, and I even remind myself, is I'm never going to be fully prepared. Just showing up is probably 95% of the battle. And, getting women to have voices at a public level and be able to share their thoughts, their insights is so valuable and important. But so many times we talk ourselves out of it, whether it's promotions, whether it's opportunities, whether it's going into commercial or private finance. It's really that thought where we go, we're not ready yet, we need some more training. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's true. I think women tend to feel that they have to know something 100% before diving into it. However, I do believe that when it comes to any experience, you have to get something out of it, which means that you shouldn't be 100% when you start. Otherwise, what's the point? You have to grow and develop, and that's a crucial part of even jumping into your next role. If you meet the requirements and the expertise that they want 100%, what are you going to get out of it apart from a paycheck? And how are you going to leverage that for your future role? Really, I think you only need to meet 60 to 80% of what the job requires in order for you to actually truly make the most of that experience. And I think women can feel more comfortable just knowing that everybody makes mistakes. at the end of the day, when you're starting out, it doesn't matter who is doing it. We all start from a place of vulnerability when we start doing something we don't know. And creating room for that discomfort, being okay with making mistakes is really, I think, something to be embraced a little bit more by women who do feel the need to be, perfect and get things right the first time.
I'm just going to ask you to repeat that, just around the fact that we don't need to be perfect, and this 60 to 80%, because I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you need to only be 60 to 80% ready for your next challenge, and sometimes even just 10% if you can leverage that really well.
And it's okay to ask for help, but I think also as women, we've got to support one another more.
Yes.
We can be so critical of ourselves and one another, and I really do believe that maintaining female quotas, involvement, whatever we want to call it, in the finance sector, particularly in, third party and also across into commercial, we've got to support one another more and create opportunities for each other and build that platform and stage that we can all stand on.
Yes, I do agree. However, I would also say that women have been some of the most supportive for me in my journey. I do agree that sometimes when you felt like a role was extremely competitive and you had to find your way in the financial services industry in the past, it did feel like, it was a very tokenistic or quota-based opportunity. So you were competing with other women, and that's why you felt that heightened sense of competition with another woman, because it felt that like there was only one seat.
There was one seat to fill, yeah.
Exactly. But, now with, I hope with all the progress we've made, people can see that women really do drive value through their diversity and experience and skills. And if we recognize that, and everyone recognizes that, there's going to be more than one seat at the table. So that will kind of eliminate that competition or that feeling of competitiveness woman to woman. And I have found that those women that have recognized that, okay, their landscape is changing, they tend to be a lot more supportive of bringing women in. So I've experienced both sides of the coin, but luckily I think 80% of the women I've met have been very supportive and helpful. Same with 80% of the men. Sometimes it's just that the minority are the loudest and the ones that gatekeep.
And that's why I think the most important thing that we can do here at the Broker In podcast is to elevate voices like that, because hearing you say what your experience has been around women supporting women, you've really made me smile today. Mm-hmm. You really have, because that has not always been the case for all women. And early in my career, it was not always my experience, because there was one seat at the table. And unfortunately, it put us in situations where we needed to compete against one another. So just reminding women out there that there are so many seats available now. Mm-hmm. And if one of us gets it, then it's certainly an opportunity to elevate and lift other women into those positions as well, because it is about having the best person available at the table. There are just way more seats available for us all to sit in and shine.
Absolutely. And it is sad that you had to experience that, because it can diminish confidence. It can really affect a person. It can make already making your way in a tough industry even tougher. And of course you're going to grow a thick skin through that, and it can feel like it's not fair sometimes when the newer generation as well, not saying that you feel that way, but I know that some women feel this way. It's not fair that there is so many opportunities coming out. But what I would say to that is to enjoy, I guess, that level at which you have achieved for yourself, and really embrace that, because no one can ever take that away from you. Not the new generation, not the old generation. The thing is, you have actually achieved something magnificent, being able to find a seat at the table when there probably was none. You probably created that seat. And now, like you said, it's that chance to create another one and another one. And if each of us create more seats every time we get a seat, of course, we're going to see more equity in this industry.
Most definitely, whether it's going to events, whether it's being involved in new networking opportunity, all we need to do is to take another one with us, yes. Whether it's just picking up the phone and inviting. So for, any women that are out there listening, or any great leaders of women, it's a really good time to remind women that things have changed. And sometimes we need to shift our perspectives and remind ourselves that the world is our oyster, and we can always start again tomorrow. Whether it's being, let down or feeling that we haven't gone in a way we want to do, we have the opportunity to change our mindset. And I think that's the most important thing that we can remember, which is also an excellent segue into you and you winning the Entrepreneur of the Year award, which is a huge achievement. Now, I'd like to ask you, how has that recognition helped you when it comes to your career? And also, what skill or strength that's allowed you to push through those challenges and really climb that glass staircase, as I call it, because I don't think there's a glass ceiling there anymore.
So I mean, getting the award as an Entrepreneur of the Year was huge for me because I don't think I've ever felt comfortable sitting there and saying, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. It felt like someone had to give you that title, even though that's not true. So this is a bit of that brain, that imposter syndrome at play, actually, which is someone has to say you are this for you to be this. And in some ways it's true in that you do need to be validated by your peers in the industry that you have the skills you have, so that you're aware that you're doing everything correctly or you're doing the job you need to do. But at the same time, if you are doing it, you can also self-validate. And that was the part I was missing. So to get that award was amazing because it validated me in the industry. And then I realized I kind of don't need any more awards ever. Because for me, it was the biggest thing to be an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur for me is probably the biggest compliment and the biggest and widest range of skills that a person can have when they come into business. So I guess it also taught me, and to answer your second question around, what I think is my strength, I believe it's resourcefulness, because I've never been 100% ready when I started something, never ever. I do feel scared, and I read this amazing book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
It's a great book.
It's a great book. So I live by those principles, and resourcefulness has allowed me to basically find out what I don't know, go and seek it, and then learn it and implement it and then leverage it. And really that's all we can do. I think life is just a journey of constant learning. And if we feel like we peak too early, then what's left? It's all downhill. So you always have to keep looking up.
One of the things I've always admired in you, and I think we've really connected on a personal level, is this insane curiosity to try and understand and learn and grow. And I really believe it is one of the greatest assets you can have as an entrepreneur, a business owner, whether it be a broker, whether it just be a woman in general wanting to, have that pathway through business. I'm really curious, what's next? What's on the horizon for you? Is there anything you can share with us?
Yeah, a little bit. I will tease it a little. I am looking at developing some more educational content for the industry, because I realize that there is a huge gap, not just in confidence, but in education. When you go and find, or you go to seek education that you need, it's not readily available, or it's not available at the depth you need, or it will take far too long, say, talking to every single lender about every single product to understand what you need. And I find that one of my personal missions is to support women in the industry and to support best practice. So to do that, I feel I do have to invest time in sharing my knowledge, and also compiling some of the best advice out there and putting together something that will actually help the industry in a big way.
So am I hearing that possibly you might just be the person that kind of cracks the AI education information barrier for our industry?
I don't know. I reckon it's going to be a multi-person effort, honestly, but I would love to be one of the people that can help in that space.
Ulrika, brilliant as well as humble. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and for sharing your insights with the broader industry. I really appreciate you, and always stay curious.
Thank you, Sarah.